Hey guys, it's Jeanette at the Not So Perfect Mom, and today I am here to do my April reading wrap up. I think I'm gonna have to maybe start doing these differently, splitting them up, maybe doing a mid-month wrap up and breaking it into two chunks, because I'm finding that I can't remember what the books are about. So I guess if it wasn't a fantastic book, then I can't remember. But I'm gonna try. So this month I read 10 books. Although technically there are 11, one of them was a children's story, and I'm not going to include that in the wrap-up. So I read 11 books technically, but I'm only going to discuss 10. I read 2,796 pages, give or take, because some of them were audiobooks. So the first book I read was The Air Affair by Jasper Fforde, and this is the first book in, I can't remember the series, Thursday Next. This is the first book in the Thursday Next series, and this one was kind of difficult. I had a hard time getting into it. I actually started reading the paperback version that I have in my hands, and then I went and downloaded the audio to it because I found that it was easier to listen to it than it was to actually read it, because this is set in a whole completely different world. It's a fantasy world about where there are like literary police, and the main character is in the literary police department, and she's under a certain division. There are several different divisions within it. Some of them are so classified they don't even know what they are, and she's trying to solve a mystery of why things are disappearing from the books, and there's a bad guy, of course, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on with it, and it's really a difficult book to explain. There's a lot of literary references, a lot of book references, there's a lot of character references, because the characters from the books get kidnapped. And if you like literature and you like books that are about literature with references that kind of have a little bit of mystery to it, then you might enjoy this one. I thought it was okay. I may continue with it, but definitely in audio format rather than the paperback, because it was easier. I don't know, it flowed easier with the audiobook. Then the next thing I read was on my Kindle. I know this was going to be bad. I Am Watching You. It's by Teresa Driscoll, and this was a thriller, and this was about two girls who get on a train to go to, I think it was London, for a girls' night out. They just fresh turned 18 or 21 or whatever the age is that they could go out on their own without their parents, and one girl comes back and one girl doesn't. And then it goes on to talk about the lady who sees the girls on the train, and she doesn't call the police and she doesn't come forward with it. Sorry. Okay, so there's a woman on the train that sees them get picked up by some boys, and some things happens on the train, and she doesn't automatically call the police because she doesn't really believe it's any of her business. And it kind of goes along with her story of when she finally does talk to the police, and the whiplash she gets from it, from people saying, you know, why didn't you come forward sooner? Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you stop it? And then there's the line from her parents and what they're going through and their relationship struggles, and there's, you know, the friendships that she has with the people that were supposed to go with her and didn't, and then there is the best friend who did go with her and left her, and what happened with her. And it sounds very tangled up, and there's a lot of different things going on, but it was actually a really good book. Then the next thing I read was Family Feasts for $75 a week, and it's an older book by Mary Austin. And I'll just put in a little clip right here of what it actually is. But it's a family frugal recipe book, and the first like 30 to 50 pages or so of it is just, you know, ways to save money, basics of cooking, you know, getting back to scratch on what you bake and what you cook and what you buy. And there's a lot of tips. A lot of it I already knew because I delve deep into that kind of thing anyway. So it was kind of basic knowledge. If you already have basic knowledge, then that part of the book's probably not going to be all that interesting. The recipes were okay. There was a few of them that I actually copied down to try, but overall it was okay. It was pretty helpful, but it wasn't, spectacular. Okay, and the next book that I read was Of Bagpipes and Books. It's a Scottish Bookshop #2 book by Paige Shelton, and I read the first book, The Cracked Spine, last year and absolutely loved it. And so when she came out with the second book, I was really excited, and I downloaded it on audio and listened to it right away. I love listening to this book series on audio because she uses actors that have the accents, and I just love the Scottish accent. Scottish Bookshop. I'm good. I'm pretty much the target audience for that book. Now, that being said, this book wasn't as good as the first one. The first book was just amazing right off the bat. And this book follows Delaney, the main character. She's an American from Kansas who moves to Edinburgh to work in this bookshop. And Delaney has like kind of special powers. Like she can hear the books talking to her. Like at the appropriate times that, she needs to solve something or she needs advice, the books will say relevant quotes to her. Now, this book didn't really kind of delve into that part of it as much as the first book. This one focused more on the store's owner, who has kind of a shady past. Now, it starts out with her going to meet it used to be his best friend's son, who is selling the store an old comic book that has something to do with their childhood, his father and the main bookstore owner's childhood. Is a woolly something comic. I don't know if that's actually a comic or not, but it would be interesting if anybody knows. You can let me know down below. Is that actually a comic? Anyway, she goes to meet him on the top of a castle, and he's found dead. So that's the whole mystery. Everybody's trying to solve what happened to him. Now, the thing is that 75% of this book could have been avoided if the bookshop owner would just talk, just communicate what is going on. It's like his whole life is this big secret, and the books just have to drag every single little secret out of him, and it kind of gets tiresome. Although, that being said, I did enjoy the book, and I did absolutely love Delaney, and I like the cab driver. If you read it, you'll know who I'm referring to. Her friends that she finds and the family that she finds while being in a foreign country without her real family. Okay, enough about that book. Then the next one I read was actually a short story told in verse, and that is Love at First Book by Sarah, I think it's Trey J. And this is just a little short story about a candy striper who works in a hospital. I guess she's, like a teenager. She's only 15 or so. And there you go. And she has a crush on a boy who she sees at a coffee shop who has a book in his back pocket. And he puts the book on a little free library shelf, and she picks it up, and they kind of have this instant bond, although neither one of them knows who the other one is. And it's just a really cute little short, essentially teenage love story. Okay, the next book that I read was The Duke and I, which also the Audible version includes the epilogue, which is The Duke and I 1.5, I guess. It's the Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. And I think I have several of her other books on my shelf, but I didn't have the first book, so I downloaded it to listen to. And this one was a little bit of fun. The main characters are Simon and Daphne. And Daphne is a kind of older girl. She's on the shelf, she's already had her seasons. And Simon is a duke who just kind of wants to be left alone. He doesn't want to be tracked down by all of the mamas who are looking for marriage material for their, daughters. So they plot this plan to pretend like they're engaged so that he can get the mamas off his back and she can do what she wants to do. And maybe, being engaged to the Duke will, bring her some admirers who, automatically wouldn't have looked at her in other cases. It was good. It wasn't fantastic, but it was good. Okay, the next book I read was The Number One Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. And this is the first book in the series, and I've had it on my shelf and haven't picked it up. But this is so interesting. I want to say it's a mystery, but it's not really a mystery. It's more of like her life solving other people's mysteries. This is about, they call her Mama Ramatswe. There's a specific way that it's pronounced, but I can't remember how it was. Anyway, her father passes away and leaves her some money. And with that money, she decides to open a detective agency. And it's nothing really fancy. It's just, she solves missing husbands things, missing money, little things that could potentially be dangerous. But, she solves them with the help of her mechanic friend and her secretary. And what makes this book so really good, though, is the cultural aspects of it, the descriptions of Botswana, the pride that the author has in this country, and the people there, and learning so much about them. And of course, the stories, the things that she solves are interesting too. They were interesting enough that after I read that one, I needed more, so I picked up The Tears of the Giraffe. And this is the second book, and it's more of the same. It's this one's got a little bit more of a tie-in that runs throughout most of the book, and that has got to do with a missing boy, or the bones of a supposedly missing boy, a witch doctor, and Mama Ramatswe's engagement to the mechanic, which is how book one ends. So that may be a little bit of a spoiler. It's not a big plot line, but it may be a spoiler if you don't want to know. And I absolutely just loved it, and I could hear the voices in my head, and I really want to continue that, and I'm going to get the next book and keep going because it was a really good series. And then the next thing I read was Shadow Spinner, and it's a young adult, middle grade more. It's called Shadow Spinner by Susan Fletcher, and this has got to do with, if you couldn't tell by the cover, it's got to do with like the story of Scheherazade is how I'm going to say it, and I'm probably mispronouncing it, and how she stops the what is he called? The Sultan from killing a wife every night by telling him stories. And she's kind of stuck for stories, and she hears this girl who's the main character of this book, her name is Margin, telling a story to some kids at the like a swap meet kind of thing. Her and her aunt or her whatever her relation is brought some jewelry in, and she's telling the kids some stories to keep them occupied. And they overhear her, and Scheherazade brings her into the fold. She brings her into the harem to learn her stories so that she can, tell them to the Sultan to keep everybody alive. And there's a story that she tells, but she doesn't know the complete story. And it goes on to tell the adventures of how they find these stories, and all of the kind of political, I don't want to say political, but I don't know how, the hierarchy of being in a harem, how that goes about, And it's actually a really good cultural story, and I think the girls might like it, so I'm going to hold on to that one for my girls. And then the next one I read was a audiobook, and it was Devil of the Highlands by Lindsay Sands. This is about a girl whose father's died, and her stepmother doesn't want her anymore, so she is just a horrible, mean, evil stepmother. And she pretty much marries her off to the Devil of the Highlands. But the Devil of the Highlands is not really a devil in disguise. He's just one of those people that lets everybody say what they want about him so that he can do what he wants to do. A bad reputation makes people scared of him, therefore he doesn't have challenges. So it's their relationship and how they work through that, and it was actually a really good book. I enjoyed that one. And it was also set in a Scottish environment too. And then, nope, that was it. That was the last one, because the last book that I read of the month was, of course, The Tears of the Giraffe, which I've already talked about. So, that is all of the books that I read in April, and I am, the 10th, already on my 3rd book in May, so I may just go ahead and do a wrap-up of it soon. What have you guys been reading? Have you read any of these books? Anything you think I might like? Just let me know down below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!